How you doing? This is Tom Styles, and this is Tom's Radio Room Show. I gotta be a little careful. I noticed in the last video I was kind of talking too loud into the webcam microphone, and the reason that is because the the webcam is right over here, which I just kicked, and I'm right next to it, trying to reach the radio. So that's the problem, and I apologize and see if I scoot around here a little bit and try to get away from that. Okay, what we wanted to do in this show is talk about scanner radios. We haven't talked about scanner radios, gosh, a long time. And the reason this subject comes up is I've had several questions about the aircraft band on the shortwave radios. For instance, um, I'll get out here in a minute. Let me get my brain in gear. The Grundig 750, for instance, I'm sorry about that. Ooh, has an aircraft band. And people have asked me, well, why don't you why don't you show that option on one of your shows? The 750 or some of the other shortwave radios that also have an aircraft band. Well, the reason being is they don't do a very good job. Number one, the aircraft band is typically an AM band, and typically the squelch, which is what you want to use because you're going to usually scan the aircraft band, because every commercial airline is on a different frequency. Now, some of the airports, they're on a given frequency, and you could plug in that frequency and just stay on that frequency, and then the squelch would probably work okay because it's not scanning, it's just sitting there waiting for a signal. But when you're trying to scan so that you're not just stuck on one frequency, and the reason being is if you want to also follow the traffic communications from the aircraft, they could be on different bands. Or, like in my case, there are 3 airports nearby, actually 4 airports nearby that I could listen to. And I could program each one of the frequencies of those airports. And there's multiple frequencies at a given airport. Sometimes, like the big Tampa International Airport has frequencies for outgoing flights, and it's got different frequencies for incoming flights, and it's got different frequencies for emergency, and there's different frequencies. So you can see there's a lot of frequencies. So instead of having to program all those frequencies in, just scan that band. And here we're talking about commercial aircraft. So again, the Grundig and shortwave radios don't do a very good job of that scanning and trying to use the squelch. They just don't do a very good job. Where a scanner, even a cheap scanner, even an older scanner, will do a very good job. A very good job. So this is one radio that I picked up off of eBay, and I got it really cheap. And I'll tell you why I got it so cheap. And it's not that old. It's, when I say not old, when you're 90 years old, 10 years is not that old. So I think it's within the past maybe 5-6 years as this came out. And it's kind of a universal scanner made by Radio Shack or sold by Radio Shack. Radio Shack doesn't make scanners. They sell other people's scanners and put their name on it, which they may not be doing that much longer. And it has limited capability. It's not a scanner you're going to use for trunking. And that's a newer feature. Again, it's not that new, but it's a newer feature that you will find on newer scanner radios that the older ones didn't have. And the trunking frequencies are above 512 megahertz, where the old scanners only went up to 512 megahertz. This one only goes up to 512 megahertz, but it has some nice features I got this radio off of eBay for $20, and the radio itself is in like new condition. Now, here was the limitations and why I got it so cheap is the advertiser says that it works fine, but it did not come with the original AC adapter. He found another one with the same voltage, so he included that. No big deal there. It did not come with any antenna. Now, this radio has two antenna hookups. One is there's a hole right here on the top of the case where you screw in a telescopic antenna, it sticks up. And then there's a BNC connector on the back for an external antenna. Right now, I just got a little uh, rubber ducky antenna stuck on her to have something. I normally have this hooked to my outside antenna for higher frequencies. It's a disc cone antenna for higher frequencies above 30 megahertz. And it's on the other side of the room, so I had to disconnect it. So that's the story about that. The boots of what on. Let's go on. Okay. The one thing I like about this, here are the things I like about this radio is I really like the display. It may not be showing up too good on my camera because I was fiddling with the lighting to try to get it right, and it may not show up as good. It's nice amber backlit display. That's one thing I like. It has 200 memories that you can store frequencies in and then scan through those memories. 200 to me is an adequate number. It has the weather function SAME for giving you weather alerts, so you can use this as a weather alert radio. It has an interface on the back for cloning the frequencies and set up in this radio to another radio. There also I say might, be software out there that'll use that interface to control the radio. I don't know if there is because this is not a real popular radio, so that may not be any software out there for that. And it has a nice, I call it S meter indicator, which is a bar graph that you will see every once in a while when it finds a station. And it's just relative. It's not accurate at all. Of course, as a friend of mine pointed out, S meters are just kind of a relative number or indication. Anyway, the bands that it includes is the lower frequency, lower, I say 29 megahertz to, I think, about 30 megahertz. No, excuse me, wrong, start over. 29 megahertz to, I think, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know why I've kind of got a brain fart here. Let me go back. I got the manual up here in case of screw ups like this. Just go back to it. Let me go back. Where are the bands? Bands. Oh, gee. Sometimes it just doesn't pay to get out of bed. Okay. The first one is 29 megahertz to 54 megahertz. That's what I was trying to say. So that includes the 10 meter ham band and the 6 meter ham band. That's what I was trying to get to. The next range it has is the FM broadcast band, so it can receive FM broadcast. The next band is the aircraft band. Again, it's the commercial aircraft, which is 108 megahertz to 137 megahertz. The next band it has 137 megahertz to 174. That includes the 2 meter ham band. And then it goes from 380 to 512, which includes some government frequencies, some business frequencies, and stuff like that. And did I mention the aircraft? It has the aircraft band 108 megahertz to 137, which is commercial. Hope we got that finally right. Anyway, the other thing that was kind of unusual about this radio when I got it, and it was used, is that when I tried to use one of the features, that's what I wanted to show you about this radio, it didn't work. Now, that feature is, I don't know if it shows up on my camera very well, and it's tilted up. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bands, buttons. And what those do is they will scan pre-selected frequencies that's built into this radio, such as the Marine band, the fire and police band. Now, this is the old fire and police band. It's not the new trunking stuff. The weather band, the ham bands, several of them, and it goes through each of them, aircraft band, and FM radio band. And all you do is you push one of those buttons and it starts scanning. So you don't have to program it in or nothing. Just push the button. And that's what I like this radio. And this is the reason I bought this radio. I've dedicated this radio to listen to the Marine. Oh, jeez. Oh, what a day. I should start over with this. I'm too far into this video to start over. The Marine band. And the reasons I'm interested in Marine band is I live on the west coast of Florida, so we have a lot of marine activity. Plus, the Tampa Bay port is a very active port for commercial boats. Ships, commercial ships. A boat is little, a ship is big. Okay, commercial ships. So we get a lot of traffic from that. And we've even had, on 2 occasions over the past 50 years, we've had some big instances. That's easy for me to try to say. One was when a big freighter boat, ship, ran into this big skyway bridge and messed it up and killed some people, and it was quite a deal. Anyway, so you can push one of these 6 buttons and get into those bands. Now, some of these have sub-bands. For instance, as I mentioned before, this scanner will tune a couple of the different ham bands. And so if you select the ham button, it will tune 4 groups. And that's the 10 meter group, the 6 meter group, the 2 meter group, and the 70 centimeter group. And you can turn off any one of those and turn them back on. Well, what happened, apparently, the previous user had turned off, like for instance, I'll just take the ham band, turned off all of them. And when I selected that button to scan the ham bands, since they were all turned off, it wouldn't scan. And I thought the radio was broken. And then I went to the police and fire, which there's 3 groups or 3 sub bands, and they were working. And so I said, well, let me see if I can turn one on and off. Well, I ended up turning all of them off. And once you turn them all off, you can't turn them back on. Now, if you just turn off, like in this case, it has 3. If you only turn off 1, you can turn it back on. So as long as there's still 1 available that's running, that's turned on, you can adjust the others. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I don't. So what happened is, apparently the previous owner had in the ham bands, had turned them all off, and then he couldn't turn them back on. And I did the same thing in the fire and police band, button. I turned them all off, and then I couldn't turn them back on. So downloaded the manual, and I said, well, most of these radios that are computer controlled have a reset button. And maybe if I, no, it's not 80 degrees outside. Oh my gosh, I'll never get through this video. So what the reset button is, normally restores the radio back to all the factory settings. So I figure, well, if I do a reset, then it will turn all those sub bands back on, and it'll work. Exactly, that's exactly what happened. got everything back. Everything's working fine. There's nothing wrong with the radio. I'm happy. So where was I? So anyway, my point originally was to answer the two questions about using the shortwave radios that have an aircraft band to scan the aircraft band. For me, this is my opinion, and it's opinion of one, and it's usually not a very good opinion, and it's easily changeable. That function under a shortwave radio, to me, doesn't work that well if you're scanning. Like I said, if you picked out frequencies and you've stored them in memory in the aircraft band range, then they don't work too bad. Also, it appears from my limited testing of the aircraft bands on shortwave radios, they're not very sensitive. And you got to keep in mind, the major use of that radio is for shortwave. And they added on the aircraft band, which is way above in frequency than the um, shortwave band. So to me, it's a compromise. To me, I would go purchase a used scanner radio. And like I said, I got this one for $20. You can get other ones that are older that also have aircraft that will work just as well. You get them for $10. I've got scanner radios that have the aircraft band on it that I've got at garage sales for $2, and they work fine. But they don't have all the new bells and whistles that new scanners have. So there must be a conclusion here someplace. I can try to think of what the conclusion. Okay, my conclusion is if you're interested in the aircraft bands, commercial now, keep that in mind, commercial, get a scanner radio, a handheld or a desktop, use that. The other thing is there is another set of bands that this radio, this radio doesn't have, and that is the military VHF bands, which is around 200 to 350 megahertz. And as I pointed out, this particular scanner doesn't scan in that range. So you can't do that. And that's for listening to VHF, which is normally short distance, less than 100 miles, aircraft communications. Now, I can also do that because there's a military base just over the bay from me, MacDill Air Force Base, because I can listen into them. There's one in Central Florida, which sometimes I can receive as long as I got a good external antenna. So this radio would not tune those frequencies. I would need a different scanner. So anyway, that's what it is. That's what it is. So in conclusion, that's what I'm trying to say is if you're into aircraft, commercial aircraft, listening to that, you're better off with a scanner. It'll perform much better than even the best shortwave radio. So that's the show for a day, and I am leaving. Bye-bye.